My sister gave our parents a brand new car for their anniversary, but then she sent me a $12,000 invoice for my share. Yeah, you read that right. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lena, and I grew up in a middle-class family that always tried to stick together. My parents, Mark and Diane, worked hard all their lives to give my sister Bryn and me everything we needed. Bryn is 3 years older than me, and ever since we were kids, she was the favorite. She always got the praise, the attention, and the benefit of the doubt. I didn't mind it much when we were younger, but as adults, that favoritism started to sting. Last year, my parents were celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary. Bryn called me a week before and said she was planning something huge for them. She told me not to worry about it, that she had it covered. I thought that was sweet of her, and honestly, I was excited. On the day of the celebration, Bryn showed up in the driveway with a big red bow on a shiny new SUV. Our parents were speechless. Mom started crying, and Dad kept saying how proud he was of her. Everyone was cheering, and all I could think was, wow, Bryn really went all out this time. The evening was full of laughter and hugs. Bryn soaked in the attention, smiling like she'd just won an award. My parents couldn't stop thanking her, and I joined in because I truly thought it was a kind gesture. I even told her later how amazing it was that she could afford something like that. She just smiled and said, anything for Mom and Dad. A week later, I got an email from her. It was an invoice. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. The subject line said car gift, your share, and when I opened it, I nearly choked. She had listed the total price of the SUV, subtracted half, and wrote, amount due, $12,000. I stared at it for minutes, thinking maybe this was her idea of a joke. But it wasn't. When I called her, she answered like nothing was wrong. Yeah, I figured we'd split it, she said casually. It's for our parents. You can send me a check or transfer the money. I told her she never asked me about this. She laughed and said, Lena, we're family. Don't make this weird. I refused to pay, and that's when everything changed. Bryn told our parents that I backed out after agreeing to help. They were disappointed and hinted that I should do the right thing. It hurt. I was being painted as the selfish one, while Bryn got to keep playing the hero. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about the car. It was about control, and Bryn wasn't done playing her game. Bryn called a family meeting on a Sunday afternoon, saying it was important. I went, thinking maybe she wanted to clear the air. Instead, she sat at the dining table with that calm, confident look she always wore when she was about to twist things her way. My parents were already seated, looking serious. I could tell right away that something was off. Bryn started by saying she was disappointed in how things had turned out. I didn't expect this kind of attitude from my own sister, she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to sound hurt. My mother looked at me as if she was waiting for me to apologize for something I didn't do. My father stayed quiet, which was worse than anything he could have said. Then Bryn began her little performance. When I bought the car, she said, it was for Mom and Dad from both of us. I just fronted the money because someone had to take initiative. Family shares responsibilities. That's what we've always done. She paused, glancing at me as though expecting me to nod along. I opened my mouth to speak, but she kept going. I'm not asking for anything unfair. I just thought we'd split it, like any loving family would. It's not about the money. It's about showing respect. Her tone was so calm that it almost sounded reasonable. I felt my chest tighten. I tried to explain that she never asked me, that she went ahead and made that decision alone. Bryn, I said, you never told me you were buying the car. You didn't even ask if I could afford it. She looked at me with that fake, patient smile. Lena, you're doing well. You make good money. I figured it wouldn't be a problem. Mom sighed. Honey, she said gently, your sister just wanted to do something nice. Don't make her feel alone in this. She did it for us. I stared at her, feeling the words stick in my throat. Dad finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. Your sister carried the load this time. You should try to meet her halfway. My hands started shaking under the table. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that I was being cornered. But every time I tried to speak, Bryn would interrupt, twisting my words to sound selfish or cold. She made it look like I was the one refusing to care about our parents. By the end of the meeting, I was the villain. Mom's eyes were full of disappointment. Bryn acted hurt, saying she never imagined money would come between us. Then she hugged Mom dramatically and walked out, leaving me sitting there speechless. That night, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel and replaying everything in my head. It wasn't just guilt they'd handed me. It was betrayal dressed up as family concern. And deep down, I knew Bryn had planned every bit of it. The next few weeks felt heavy. Every message from Bryn made my stomach twist. She acted like nothing had happened, sending cheerful texts about Mom's garden or asking if I'd seen a new show. But underneath the sweetness, There was always that smug tone, like she was reminding me that she still looked like the good one. At family dinners, she talked louder than anyone else, her stories polished and practiced. She bragged about her job, about how hard she worked to make big family gestures. Every word sounded rehearsed. I watched her pour wine for everyone, smiling just enough to seem generous, but her eyes kept flicking toward me, waiting for me to slip. That's when I started to really see her for who she was. I remembered moments I'd brushed off before, like the time she used my presentation notes in college and won an award, then told everyone she helped me with it. Or the Christmas she asked me to cover her half of a gift, promising to pay me back, then telling our parents it was all her idea. Back then, I thought she was just forgetful or proud. Now I knew better. One afternoon, I stopped by my parents' house. My dad was in the garage, working on his old fishing gear. He looked tired. I asked how he was doing, and after a long pause, he said quietly, "Your sister means well, Lena. She just pushes too hard sometime." His voice cracked slightly, and I realized he knew more than he was saying. I asked what he meant, but he shook his head. She insisted on putting the car in her name. Said it'd be easier for paperwork. I didn't want to argue. You know how she gets. That hit me. Easier for her, not them. Everything Bryn did suddenly made sense. The way she always had to be in control, the way she twisted small moments into proof of her greatness. It was never about kindness. It was about power. That night, I went through old messages from her, reading them with new eyes. Every offer to help came with a hidden string attached. Every favor turned into something I owed her for later. The pattern was so clear now it almost made me laugh, bitterly. The next time we all got together, I noticed how Mom glanced at Bryn before answering any question, like she was checking what was safe to say. Even my dad stayed quiet around her. The golden image our family had built around Bryn was starting to crack, and once I saw those cracks, I couldn't unsee them. For the first time, I wasn't just angry about the car. I was angry at myself for letting her run the show for so long. She'd built her kingdom on charm and manipulation, and I had helped her keep it standing. Not anymore. Something in me shifted that day, quiet but certain. Bryn's messages started coming in every few days. At first, they were short and polite. "Hey, just checking if you had a chance to sort the payment." I ignored them, hoping she'd drop it. But she didn't. The texts grew sharper, like needles dressed as reminders. "It's been a month, Lena. You can't keep avoiding responsibility." Then another. "You're putting me in a bad position with Mom and Dad." I tried not to respond, but one night, after a long day at work, I finally snapped. I wrote, "Stop messaging me about this. I never agreed to pay for that car." She replied within seconds, "Then I'll have to handle it professionally." The next morning, I opened my email and froze. There it was, an invoice. Not just a note, but something that looked official. Her business logo, a due date, even a payment policy at the bottom. The subject line read, "Outstanding balance. Vehicle gift contribution." I stared at it for a long time, part of me angry, the other part stunned that my own sister would go this far. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was strained. "Honey, Bryn showed us the invoice," she said softly. "It's not right for you to leave her hanging. People will think badly of her." I felt my throat tighten. "Mom, she made that up. I never agreed to anything." But she didn't seem to hear me. "Sweetheart, it's embarrassing for her. You can afford to help. Why let money come between sisters?" Dad said little, but I could tell he was tired of hearing about it. "Just sort it out quietly," he muttered. Every word made me feel more alone. Eli, my fiancé, watched me pace around our living room that night. "She's pushing you because you've always given in," he said calmly. "Don't do it this time." His voice was steady, and that steadiness grounded me. "But my parents," I began. He shook his head. "You can love them without letting her use them against you." After that, I stopped answering Bryn's messages. But her reach didn't end there. At dinner with the family the following weekend, she made sure to mention some people not following through. Every sentence was a jab dressed as politeness. Mom looked down. Dad stayed silent. I felt my face burn, but I didn't respond. Instead, I started paying attention. I saved every message, every email, every voicemail that hinted at her manipulation. I took screenshots and stored them quietly, knowing one day I might need them. The air at family gatherings grew thick with unspoken tension. Bryn smiled too much, her words coated in sugar but sharp underneath. Every time she called me little sister, it sounded more like a warning. I sat there, calm on the outside, but inside, a cold determination began to form. If she wanted to play dirty, I was done pretending not to notice. One quiet evening, while sorting through my old emails, I came across a message from the car dealership addressed to both Bryn and my parents. My name wasn't on it, but curiosity made me open it anyway. The first line mentioned a business loan agreement. My heart began to race. I read it again and again, trying to make sense of the words. It said the vehicle was registered under Bryn's company, with our parents listed as sponsors. My hands went cold. She hadn't bought the car outright. She'd taken a loan in her business's name. I searched through more messages, clicking every link she'd ever sent me. A few clicks later, I found another email from the dealership. It included the payment breakdown, and there it was clear as day. Bryn had only paid the down payment. The rest was financed through a loan. All that talk about splitting costs wasn't about family or fairness. She was trying to make me cover her debt. My chest tightened with anger. The invoice she'd sent me wasn't just greedy, it was calculated. She'd built this whole story to trap me into paying for her business loan while pretending it was a gift for our parents. It was manipulation layered so perfectly that anyone else would have believed her. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I sat in silence, letting the truth settle. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Her pushy reminders, her fake professionalism, her embarrassment when I refused. It was all an act to pressure me before I figured things out. That night, Eli found me sitting at my desk surrounded by papers. He didn't ask questions, just handed me his laptop and said, "Save everything." I did. Every email, every document, every thread that proved what she'd done. I made folders, backed them up, even printed copies. Each piece of evidence felt like a small breath of control returning to me. I thought about my parents, how she'd used their trust to get her loan approved. They probably had no idea they were tied to a business deal. The thought made me sick. She had put them at risk, and then had the nerve to paint herself as a generous daughter. For the first time in weeks, my anger turned sharp, focused. I didn't yell or confront her. I didn't warn her about what I'd found. Instead, I waited. Bryn always believed she was the smartest person in the room. She loved to perform, to keep her lies neat and shiny. I decided I'd let her keep performing, just long enough for everyone to see what kind of person she really was. So I stayed quiet. Every smile I gave her after that carried a secret she didn't know I held. She thought I was backing down, but really, I was building something far stronger, the truth, and a plan she wouldn't see coming. I asked Bryn to meet me one evening at a small cafe near our parents' house. She arrived looking confident, like she had already won whatever argument I was planning to have. I kept my voice calm. "Bryn, I know about the loan. I've seen the paperwork." She blinked once, then smiled like it was a joke. "What loan?" she said lightly, stirring her coffee. I didn't flinch. "The one you took out under your company's name. The one that has Mom and Dad listed as sponsors." Her smile tightened, but she didn't look surprised, just annoyed that I'd found out. "Lena, you're overreacting," she said, waving her hand like she was brushing away a fly. "It's just a formality. Everyone signs something when there's a big purchase. You wouldn't understand business." My stomach twisted. "They didn't even know they signed for a loan, Bryn. That's not a formality. That's deception." She laughed softly, almost pitying. "You're so dramatic. I'm taking care of everything. You should really stop trying to make this bigger than it." Her arrogance made it clear she'd never admit anything. I realized then that words wouldn't change her mind, only proof would. So I stood up, left the untouched coffee on the table, and said quietly, "You had your chance to tell the truth. That weekend, I invited everyone over for dinner. Bryn thought it was an attempt at peace. She even brought flowers, smiling like she was ready to forgive me. I waited until we'd finished eating. Then I took a folder from my bag and placed it on the table. "I have something to show you," I said. Bryn's eyes flicked toward it instantly. My parents looked confused. I handed the papers to Dad first, copies of the loan documents, the dealership emails, and the signatures. His expression changed as he read. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom leaned over, reading along, and her hand went to her mouth. "Bryn, you used our names for this?" Bryn's face flushed. "It's not what it looks like," she said quickly. "It's just business paperwork. They told me it was required." Dad slammed the folder shut. "Don't lie to me. These are financial documents. You put us down as guarantors without even asking." His voice was sharp, something I hadn't heard in years. Bryn tried to smile again, but it faltered. "I was going to handle it. You're making it sound worse than it is." I didn't say a word. I just watched as the truth finally stripped away her calm mask. Mom looked between us, tears welling. "How could you do that, Bryn? We trusted you." The room went silent except for the clock ticking on the wall. Bryn stood there, her face pale, her mouth opening and closing like she might find a lie that could save her. But the proof sat right there in front of her, impossible to spin. For once, she had nothing left to say. The silence after the truth came out didn't last long. Bryn's calm expression cracked first, then the anger poured out of her like fire. She slammed her hand on the table, eyes flashing. "You just couldn't stand that I did something nice for them," she shouted. "You've been jealous since we were kids." Dad stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Enough," he said. His tone was low but filled with finality. "This isn't about jealousy. You used our names for a loan. That's fraud, Bryn." She froze for a second, then scoffed. "You're all overreacting. I was going to pay it off. No one was ever in danger." Mom's voice trembled. "You lied to us. You made us believe that car was a gift. Tears streaked her face, and Bryn's eyes darted toward me. This is your fault, she snapped. You couldn't just keep your mouth shut, could you? You had to ruin everything for me. Her voice broke into a half-scream. You made me look like a criminal in front of my own family. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. The proof spoke for itself, and the more she yelled, the smaller she seemed. Dad picked up the papers again, his jaw tight. You're calling the dealership tomorrow, he said. You're removing our names from this contract immediately. I don't care what it costs. Bryn's hands shook. You can't tell me what to do. It's my business. Mom stood up too, voice shaking but firm. You stopped treating us like family the moment you used us for your lies. The argument went on until Bryn grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. None of us spoke for a long time afterward. The next day, the fallout began to spread. Word traveled through the family. Aunt Claire called asking if the rumors were true. Apparently, Bryn had already tried spinning her version of the story, saying I misunderstood everything. But once the documents surfaced, her version fell apart fast. Then came the call from her fiancé, Jordan. He'd been blindsided. He showed up at my parents' house 2 days later, holding copies of the same papers. She told me it was a business purchase, he said quietly. I didn't know your parents were tied to it. His face looked drained, and when he left, it was clear he wasn't coming back to her. Bryn tried reaching out that week, not to apologize but to accuse. Her messages were full of rage. She said I'd destroyed her life, that I'd turned everyone against her. Each message sounded more desperate than the last. At home, the air finally felt lighter. My parents were hurt, but relieved to know the truth. For the first time, Dad said, I should have seen it sooner. Bryn's perfect image had shattered completely, and she had no one left to fool. The weeks that followed were quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm, heavy, full of things no one could take back. My parents were meeting with the bank and the dealership, trying to remove their names from the loan Bryn had created. I went with them to every appointment, sitting beside them while they signed papers and asked careful questions. Bryn didn't show up once. Instead, she sent short, defensive texts to Mom, excuses about timing and business issues. But the truth was catching up to her faster than she could spin it. People who once admired her started to keep their distance. Clients backed out of deals. Word spread quietly through town that she'd forged her parents' names on a loan. Her business reputation began to crumble on its own. I didn't take any satisfaction in it at first. Watching her unravel wasn't fun. It was sad. She had built everything on control and appearances, and now both were slipping through her hands. The person who had always walked into every room like she owned it was suddenly scrambling to hold on to anything. At home, the atmosphere shifted. My parents stopped defending her. One evening after dinner, Dad said softly, "We were wrong about a lot of things." Mom nodded, her eyes misty. "I'm sorry for not believing you, sweetheart. We should have listened." The apology was quiet, but it meant everything. For the first time in months, I felt like part of my family again. I spent my days helping them sort out the paperwork, canceling accounts, writing letters, making calls. Every step felt like undoing a knot Bryn had tied without caring who got tangled in it. Through it all, I kept my tone calm, my words measured. I didn't gloat or remind them that I'd been right. I just focused on setting things right. Bryn tried reaching out several times. The first call came late one night. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice sounded shaky, almost frightened. "Lena, please call me. I need to explain." A day later, she sent an email, long, emotional, full of excuses and half-truth. She said she'd been under pressure, that she never meant for things to go so far. I didn't reply. More messages followed over the next few weeks, each one softer than the last. Then silence. I guess she finally realized I wasn't going to play her game anymore. Karma had done the work for me. Her downfall came not from revenge or exposure, but from her own choices catching up with her. I didn't need to fight or prove anything anymore. My peace, steady and unshaken, became its own kind of justice. And that, I realized, was the quietest revenge of all. Several months passed before things began to feel normal again. The tension that had once filled every room slowly faded, replaced by quiet evenings and long talks that didn't end in arguments. My parents spent more time together, finding small joys again, cooking, gardening, watching old shows. I could see the weight of disappointment still lingered on their faces, but at least it wasn't mixed with confusion anymore. During one of those nights, Dad mentioned how much he missed the old car he used to drive when we were kids, a beat-up blue sedan that had broken down years ago. He said it with a soft smile, remembering how he'd taught Mom to drive in it. Something about that moment stayed with me. For the first time since everything with Bryn fell apart, I wanted to do something for them, not out of guilt or obligation, but love. A few weeks later, I found the same model listed online, almost identical to the one we'd owned. It needed some work, but I bought it anyway. On weekends, I worked with a local mechanic to restore it. New paint, new seats, Even the same license plate number Dad used to joke about remembering better than birthday. I didn't tell my parents what I was doing. When the car was finally ready, I parked it in their driveway early one Saturday morning. Mom opened the door first, still in her robe, and froze when she saw it. Dad stepped out behind her, his eyes wide, like he was staring at a ghost from another life. I handed him the keys. "It's yours," I said simply. "No paperwork, no surprises, just something that belongs to you." Mom covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Dad ran his hand along the hood, whispering, "You did this?" His voice was quiet, but I could hear the emotion underneath. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said, "for everything you've been through." They both hugged me, tighter than they had in years. It wasn't about the car itself. It was about trust, something real, untainted, given freely. For the first time since all of this began, I saw peace on their faces, the kind that doesn't need words. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Bryn. The preview line showed only one sentence: "You stole my family." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to explain, nothing left to defend. I sat outside on the porch, watching my parents take the car for a slow drive around the block, their laughter echoing faintly down the street. That sound, simple and pure, felt like everything had finally settled. Bryn's world had fallen apart by her own hand, but ours had quietly found its way back together. Looking back, it's strange how something as simple as a gift could uncover years of hidden tension. I used to believe that family was a shield, that no matter how messy things got, love would keep everyone grounded. But I learned that love without honesty isn't real. It's just a performance. And Bryn had been performing for so long that even she couldn't tell what was true anymore. For months, I replayed everything that happened, wondering if I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have shouted less, or tried harder to understand her. But every time I thought about it, I came back to the same truth. She didn't want understanding. She wanted control. And once I stopped giving it to her, the illusion of family she'd built began to crumble. My parents and I slowly rebuilt what she had nearly destroyed. We talked more openly, laughed about small things again, and learned how to see each other without her shadow standing between us. The quiet moments with them became something sacred, a reminder that peace doesn't need to be loud to be strong. Bryn faded out of our lives after that last message. She didn't apologize or try to make things right. Maybe she couldn't face what she'd done, or maybe she just couldn't stand losing the power she once had. I stopped wondering why. Letting go of that question felt like closing the final door on the chaos she left behind. Sometimes I think about her, not with anger but with a kind of tired sympathy. She'd spent her whole life chasing praise, building her worth out of other people's approval. When the truth came out, there was no one left to clap for. And that silence, the one she'd always feared, became her own punishment. My revenge wasn't about destroying her life. I didn't need to humiliate her or see her fail. The real victory was quieter. It was in every night I slept without dread, in every conversation with my parents that didn't end in guilt. It was in knowing I had stood my ground when it would have been easier to give in. Now, when I think about what happened, I don't feel bitter. I feel free. I learned that family doesn't always mean fairness, and blood doesn't excuse betrayal. Trust isn't automatic. It's earned, and once broken, it can't just be glued back together. But healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from refusing to keep playing someone else's game. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone who's lived through something like this, it's that silence can be its own kind of justice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or payback. It's peace, the kind that can't be shaken once you've found it. Hey besties, thanks for staying with me till the end of this wild story. Can you imagine your own sister gifting your parents a car, then sending you the bill? It's crazy how family can twist love into guilt, but peace hits harder than revenge. If you felt that too, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this one. See you in the next one. Bye.